Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our panel on miscarriage. My name is Cassie Destino. I am a certified fertility doula and the founder of IVF Support UAE. And I've also had a miscarriage. Miscarriages remain such a taboo subject, and so few of us speak openly about our experiences with them. And there is often a lot of guilt and shame associated with miscarriage that can make the process of healing so much harder. I was 12 weeks pregnant after my first IVF, and I'd seen a strong and steady heartbeat several times. In those few months of being pregnant, I'd imagined a whole life for my baby, and I'd figured out, how old he'd be at Christmas time and how old I'd be on his first birthday. And it doesn't take long for you to imagine a whole life. So when there was no heartbeat at my 12-week scan, I was devastated. I didn't talk about it except for the very few people very close to me. But over the years, as I've started to open up about it and talk to other people about it, I have been at first surprised and then not very surprised to hear about how many other people have had this experience. And we just don't really talk about it too much. I've got a really extraordinary guest with me today. I have Nadia. She is from England. She's been in Dubai for 10 years, and she's got 5-year-old twin boys who were born in Dubai. And 2 years ago, she experienced 2 miscarriages in the period of 6 months. So I'm going to have her tell us a little bit about her story. Nadia, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Cassie. Thanks so much. Yes, as Cassie said, I have 5-year-old twin boys. They were born here in Dubai. That pregnancy in itself was massively complicated. I do have them here with me. So these past 5 years have been amazing. And then the past 2 years ago, I decided, I wanted to expand my family. I wanted to have another child, to have siblings for the boys. That was something that I really envisioned and wanted in life, is to see the boys as older brothers. And as I mentioned, my twin pregnancy had been incredibly high risk, that I really wanted to experience this stereotypical, idyllic, non-high risk pregnancy. And I just wanted to know what it would be like to be pregnant with just one child. So that was something that I had really wanted in life. I did fall pregnant in April 21. And I literally scanned the minute that I could. Like, I waited, I think it was about 6 weeks, and then I went to the doctor to scan. And on the scan, yes, it confirmed that I was pregnant. However, the sac was empty. So the advice at the time was to wait another week. There was a possibility that the dates were a bit off. So if I came back in a week, things might have developed, things might have changed. So I did wait another week. And when I went back to rescan, the outcome was the same. Nothing had developed, the pregnancy hadn't moved along, and the sac was empty. And I did have a vacation planned, actually, not long after that. And I had to decide if I was going to wait for my body to naturally miscarry, or if I was going to book in for a D&C. And I do remember having very strong pregnancy symptoms. I was very nauseous. Like, my breasts had grown loads and I wasn't fitting into my clothes. And I just didn't want a D&C. I didn't want to go to hospital. I didn't want to be under anesthesia. I didn't want to be away from the boys. So I did wait a little bit, but my body just wasn't recognizing that this pregnancy wasn't developing. So at that point, I did decide to book for a D&C. And then I fell pregnant again by October of the same year. And I waited a little bit longer to scan this time. I thought, if I don't know what I thought, but if I just waited that bit longer, maybe the outcome would be different. And that pregnancy happened to be a twin pregnancy. And I knew the second I saw the screen. And I do vividly remember saying to the doctor, "It's empty. It's exactly the same as last time." And yeah, the sacs were empty. Again, we waited a week to see if anything would develop, if anything would change, and it didn't. So that time I didn't wait. I didn't spend the time for my body to naturally miscarry. I did book for a D&C. That one I had to cover for myself, as insurance covers one in a year. So I did have a D&C at the end of October. And as that was 2 miscarriages within 6 months, at that point, I had to decide, was I going to continue trying, or was I going to end my journey and have my life with my 2 boys? And that's what I decided. I didn't decide to carry on trying any longer.
Yeah, that is a very difficult decision to make. The stakes are really high in that kind of decision. We have been fortunate enough also to be joined now by Caroline Wanjuru. She is from Kenya. She's been in Dubai for 3.5 years. She experienced a late miscarriage at 20 weeks. And then she's founded Still a Mom, which is a nonprofit that supports bereaved parents in Kenya. She had 2 miscarriages, a blocked tube diagnosis, a failed IVF cycle, but then she conceived and has now a 6-year-old son. And she's really, really passionate about bereavement support for parents who've lost a baby. Caroline, welcome. I'm so glad you were able to join us. I wonder if you'd share a bit of your story with us.
Thank you so much, Cassie. Sorry I'm late, had a bit of tech trouble.
Yeah, I understand.
It happens. After all these years, we still have trouble with Zoom and Teams and all of that.
Absolutely.
But as you shared, yeah, it was, sometimes it feels like it was a long time ago, and other times it feels like it was just yesterday, because that's how complicated grief is. But yes, I did have a late miscarriage at 20 weeks. And this was just after we'd found out that we were expecting a girl, like during the last scan, we were able to know that we were expecting a girl, and it was so exciting. But I'd had a difficult pregnancy up until this point. I'd had threatened miscarriage with this loss at the beginning at 6 weeks. And then I was put on bed rest. I was put on hormonal therapy. And I made it out of the first trimester, and I was super excited. But then 16 weeks in, I fell ill. I was just sick. And I visited many doctors who could never quite tell what was the problem. I was just feverish and cold and sometimes hot. And it was just 4 weeks of visiting this doctor and that doctor. And then unfortunately at 20 weeks, I went into preterm labor, and I remember rushing to the hospital and getting there. And I had an amazing doctor, and she was just awesome. And when my water broke, I remember her, just the look of disappointment in her face, because she said, we cannot go back from this point. At this point, like as soon as the water breaks, this baby is coming, and we both know that at 20 weeks, it's too early. And so she was born still, and we later did find that I had listeria, which was very hard to detect through a lot of the tests that were being carried out at the time. It's sort of like an oxymoron, because you're sick, you have an infection, an antibiotic could be helpful, but at the same time, when you're pregnant, they have to give you antibiotics that are easy on you because of the pregnancy. And so we later did find that the listeria had infected the placenta, and she had a lot of liver trouble and kidney trouble. And basically, I think the doctor, just to ease things, was making me feel like even if she'd been born alive, she really wouldn't have made it that long. And And then soon after about 3 months of, just sort of letting the body reset, we did get pregnant, and I'm extremely grateful for that period when pregnancy was not tough for us. But then we lost the baby at 8 weeks. And like you've shared, the next couple of years went on to be difficult with now trying to get pregnant, and we just couldn't. And this was a struggle we were not familiar with, because the past 2 pregnancies were easy. It was easy to, to conceive. And yeah, so it was a very difficult season, moving from hospital to hospital. And at some point I just needed a break. And I remember telling my husband that I don't want to see a hospital lobby for a while. And so it's been a very interesting experience, though, from supporting other parents, other moms, and getting to work with them. And that has been extremely fulfilling, joyful on my end, to just be able to work with them through, whether it's one-on-one therapy, whether it's support group forums. Yeah, but that's basically my story in a nutshell.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. You two have quite different stories about miscarriage. So many women find that the conversation stops when you bring up miscarriage. If you do bring it up, if you are in a social setting or somehow it comes up. Can you talk to, Nadia, does that experience make you want to talk less about miscarriage? Does it give you the feeling that it's not a safe subject? How do you feel about talking about it with other people?
Well, I mean, now I'm comfortable, and I feel like confident and secure in myself about my miscarriages to be able to talk about them. I'm not emotional so much about them anymore. So that for me makes it easier to talk about it. I have been in social situations where I randomly brought it up and literally the room goes quiet, like conversation stops. And I think it's because not a lot of people know how to react. They don't really know what to say or how to say it, or if you're okay like talking about it. So I think it's just that people don't know how to react to it. But I do feel that it needs to be talked about more. But it is just a hard thing to bring up randomly. How do you randomly just bring up that you've had a miscarriage? So it is difficult.
It is. I mean, that was the experience that I had, that I was talking about earlier, that I had a miscarriage at 12 weeks and I didn't bring it up. But over the years, especially in the work that I do, I'm talking to women about fertility a lot. I am, in the community. And when I bring it up, I am often, and like I said, I used to be surprised, and now I'm less and less surprised by how many other women have experienced miscarriage. And for some women, it isn't a big part of their story. They had one, they moved on, they had another baby, they don't think about it anymore. For some women, of course, it's one of the defining moments of their lifetime. And, we all have a different relationship to the idea of it. Wanjura, do you remember ever having a feeling about miscarriage before you experienced it? Was it something you were afraid of? Was it something that you talked about? Can you remember how you related to the concept of miscarriage before you experienced it?
I knew nothing about it, Cassie. I sometimes right now marvel when I look back at how naive I was about pregnancy when I got pregnant with my first child. I knew the basics. 2 people have unprotected sex, you get pregnant, 9 months later, you come home with a baby. That's all I knew. And I have this joke with my husband that, I hate how much we know about this journey. And I hear the same with all the moms, because especially like trying to conceive later, pregnancy after a loss is a whole other thing to navigate, because now you have all this information and all the things that could go wrong. And it doesn't help that when I work with moms who are pregnant even right now, when someone shares their news, I am thrilled for them, but there's that sitting anxiety in my heart because I have been on the other end of when the story does not have a happy ending. But before my pregnancy, I didn't know. And that's actually what led me to starting Still a Mom. Because after we lost our daughter, I went into this frenzy of research and I went online. And at that time, I think I was 25 or 26, and I was wondering how I have been this old and never known there is miscarriage and stillbirth and infant death and SIDS and all of these other things that this community that we are now part of is aware of. And yeah, so it just opened my eyes to a whole other world that I was not aware of.
And, of course, there have been all of those things. And, our mother's generation experienced all of those things. I mean, they didn't get to look up a hashtag on Instagram about it and see who else had that experience. And in a way that there can be a community to surround you is, for me, it was very beneficial. What I didn't want to tell my friends, but I didn't mind reading about strangers' experiences with it. Somehow that was more of a comfort to me than, talking to my friends. I think that there's so much shame and guilt that gets baked into, to most things about being a woman and being a mother, but about miscarriage, that there's this idea that I didn't do it right. I wasn't the proper vessel, and this baby didn't live because my body failed it somehow. Nadia, did you ever kind of struggle with any of those feelings of guilt? Was that part of it for you?
I didn't have guilt so much, but it was more like, how is this not working? Why is this not working? Like, is that kind of feeling, like, and it's not something that I really thought would happen to me. Like, obviously it can happen to anybody. And when it happened the second time, I was like, no, this is it. Like, it's working. There's no way this is going to happen twice.
Not going to happen twice in a row, right?
Yeah. So it wasn't so much guilt. It was just, I wanted it to work, and I was curious, like, why is this not happening, more than I didn't do something right.
Yeah. I wonder if you could both speak to what was it like. So for Nadia, your children, you had children before your miscarriage, and Caroline, you had a child after your miscarriage. So you kind of had the opposite experience. Caroline, can you talk about, and you just touched on it a bit, when you're pregnant after a loss, how does that change the way you feel about that pregnancy and that birth-giving experience and raising your son? How do you think the miscarriage has influenced your feelings about that?
I'd say, starting from that pregnancy test, I took 3 because I couldn't believe it, and that's because of the years it had taken us to get here. The 2 losses, the IVF cycle that had failed, all of the HSG tests I had done in the hospital, and so it had been probably, I'd say, 4 or 5 years of this journey. And so when that pregnancy test was positive, I just couldn't believe it. I was numb. And so I took a second and a third before I even had a conversation with my husband, and I went with all 3 to break the news. And I know, probably, especially as you work with people on fertility, this is a whole other thing as well. But now when you're pregnant, there's this excitement, but there's this nagging anxiety that just sits there. And I'd point to 2. I'd say one is the doctor visits for the pregnancy after loss. You never know how that ultrasound will go. You've been on the other side of hearing, oh, I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat. So when you go and then you
Oh, we seem to have frozen, or I have frozen.
No, I think it was
okay,
just...
You're not frozen. Okay.
No.
Okay, so I want you, Caroline, you're frozen right now. So I'm going to ask the question of you. How did mothering feel different after you had your miscarriages?
For me,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, the miscarriages for me was like it was hope, and it was the things that I had. Once I knew I was pregnant, I was imagining, like, so I was imagining my boys as big brothers, and I was imagining them playing with this child that didn't exist. So I mean, it's strange to miss something that you haven't had or haven't met. It's a really weird feeling. But I have accepted that it's the two boys, and I'm okay with that. I'm happy with how our family is, and so I mean, it hasn't changed the attention that I give them or the love that I have for them. They are my entire world. I'm incredibly grateful for them regardless. I mean, that pregnancy was incredibly complicated, so the fact that I have them anyway is just an absolute miracle. So I have them, they are amazing. My story didn't go in another way, in the way that I'd wanted it to, but this is obviously the way it was meant to be for us and for them. They have each other, they have me, I have them. So that, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about this concept that we shouldn't tell people that we're pregnant until we're in the safety zone, till into the second trimester? How do you feel about that?
I mean, it adds so much pressure. I mean, you're literally got to keep a secret. So I personally would want to tell everybody. I would want to run around telling every single person that I was pregnant. Like, when I was pregnant, I was wanting to tell everyone. I find it a lot of pressure. I did find it a lot of pressure. I found with my pregnancies after the twins, I did mention to my family and to my friends pretty quickly. Like, and I just thought, well, if anything is going to happen, at least somebody knew about it. I didn't tell everyone. I was very selective. But for me personally, I feel there's a lot of pressure to keep it quiet. And like, you have symptoms and you're like, I was feeling nauseous and my clothes were really tight very quickly. My breast had grown massively. So I'm trying to hide that at work, and function daily. So it's a lot having to hide it for the first trimester.
Yeah. Caroline, we're talking about the concept that you're not supposed to tell people that you're pregnant until you've passed that danger zone, if you will. How do you have any feelings about that? What do you think of that?
Sorry, again, a lot of internet trouble today. I'm not even sure what's happening. But so I'd say I'm on the other side of the wall about this. I'd say if you want to share the news, and especially with those that are close to you, go right ahead. I feel like sometimes fear can also rob us of so much. Like, I meet people who've lost a baby and I'm like, have that baby bump shoot. I'm not saying that that could be all you get, but none of us is guaranteed how long we are going to have our children for, whether it's 10 weeks or 10 years or 30 years. None of us has any guarantees, even those of us who've lost a baby. And that's the approach I have with my son now that it's taken so long. Not to say that I have not struggled with, overnight wake ups and I'm exhausted, but every now and then I remind myself how badly I wanted this, And so I would say take every day and just really enjoy it. And if that means sharing it with a couple of close people, you may not need to go on the internet and share it with like everybody, but go right ahead. I think it's so important also to surround yourself with a solid support system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on that lovely and positive note, I want to thank you both for your time today and for sharing your stories. It's a really generous thing to do, to share a story like this with our community, and we value both of you and our community so much. And I really thank you today for your time and for joining us today on our chat on miscarriage. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.